Everybody, I'm Dr. Greg Sloop, and it's time for Live at 5 on this Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. We're up to day 173 in our one-year journey through the New Testament, and we're today looking at Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to jump right in with verse 1 and following in this first section that talks about walking in love. Walking in love. Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love, as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not even be named among you, as is fitting for saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks. For this you know, that no fornicator, unclean person, nor covetous man who is an idolater has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not be partakers with them. That's verses 1 through 7 of Ephesians 5. Paul continued his section on practical Christian living in this chapter by instructing the Ephesians to imitate God like children would imitate a parent. He also lifted up the value of Christian love, a godly love toward one another. He says it is like a beautiful aroma in God's eyes, or is God's nostrils, excuse me. Paul then outlawed several sinful acts, even saying that those who practice such things will not be saved. Let's ponder those again. There is fornication, being unclean, covetous, idolatry, that you can't have an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Then we move to a section that talks about walking in light. Verse 8, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light. For whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore he says, awake, you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. That's verses 8 through 14. Paul reminded the Ephesians here that God has taken them from darkness into light. Therefore, they should walk in the light in a way that is acceptable to the Lord. He then told them to shun the things of darkness, not going back into their old sinful ways. Paul warned them that things done in darkness will be exposed in the light. Don't think that your dark deeds will remain hidden forever. Sooner or later, they will be exposed. He then goes on from talking about walking in love and walking in light. Now he goes to talk about walking in wisdom. Walking in wisdom, starting in verse 15. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another in the fear of God. That's verses 15 to 21 of Ephesians 5. Well, the next practical teaching involves being alert and aware of the temptation of evil. Walk in love, walk in light, now walk in wisdom. He used the word here to walk circumspectly. The circumspect would be the entire the entire area around you, everything, seeing in a 360-degree view of the world around you. In other words, be completely aware of your surroundings and aware of what's coming. Paul then warned against being drunk with wine, rather pointing the readers to the power of the Spirit as the only right thing to be filled with. Don't be drunk. He then encouraged them to sing songs and hymns. He includes the words psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs in order to glorify God. Use music to glorify God. And he also told them to be thankful people. And finally, he said, be submissive to one another in the fear of the Lord. Be submissive to one another, regardless of gender, regardless of national origin, regardless of the color of your skin. Be submissive to one another in the fear of the Lord. Then he moves into talking about marriage, and he uses the analogy of Christ and the church to demonstrate the relationship of marriage and how it should operate. Verse 22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. Submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is head of the wife, as also Christ is head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. That's verses 22 to 33. Well, after declaring the norm at the end of the previous passage to be submission to one another and to the Lord, Paul now proceeded to instruct wives to submit to their own husbands as to the Lord. He declared the husband to be the head of the wife and compared that role to Christ and the church. He followed that up with a command for husbands to love their wives in return, just as Christ loved the church, giving himself for it, leading that church into holiness and service unto God. He reminded the church of the concept of one flesh, and he reiterated the need for a husband to love his wife just as he loves himself, and then for the wife to respect her husband. A whole book was written on love and respect, the concept of men needing respect, women needing love, men needing to be seen as a leader and as someone strong to care for his family, and a wife needing to be cherished and know that she is loved more than anything else in her husband's life. All these things are common sense. They're right here in Ephesians, and it's good for us to see them. Now, while some may consider this passage archaic, or even culturally irrelevant because it seems to put a woman in a subservient role to the man in her life, it is still applicable for the modern church because order is godly. There are homes that operate in utter chaos. They have great tension and great stress and great anxiety. And that is not God's will. Chaos is not God's will. Order is godly, and it brings peace and comfort to those who live in godly order. So therefore, we have to look at this passage not as a manifesto on patriarchal oppression, but rather a godly treatise on order in the home and appropriate emotional responsibilities and roles based on God's knowledge of our needs. Nobody wants to be disrespected. No one wants to be made to seem like a servant to their spouse But we all should want to be found a servant to our spouse. Men should serve women just as women should serve men. Men should respect women just as women should respect men. There should be a mutual submission here. But the thing about it is, there must also be order that keeps things going in the right direction. There can't be chaos. It can't be a pluralistic society. It cannot be everybody do what they want to do. There has to be an order. There has to be order in the home. And without order in the home, a home will fall apart. So, love it or not, hate it or not, if you don't like what God said through Paul, then you're going to have to find a way to come to grips with it. If you do like what God said through Paul, then start living it and don't just talk about it. But whatever you do, make sure that wives realize the need in their husband's psyche even for respect, and that husbands realize the need in their wives' life to be cherished, to be treated with dignity, to be treated as something special, to be treated as a woman that is more important than any other human being on the face of the earth to you, men. And women, don't down your husband. Don't nag him. Don't tell him how sorry he is. Respect that man. And even if you have to do it on credit, do it, because what you speak can come to pass. And if you speak negative over your husband, guess what? You're always going to be seen as someone who doesn't think he's good enough. And that man is not going to flourish in that environment. Women, respect your husbands. Men, love your wives. Now, I'm not just talking about trying to be a romantic or trying to be a lover boy. I'm talking about loving them like Christ loved the church. Sacrificial love. You don't always have to have your way. There are times when your wife's going to know better what to do than you do, and you have to be willing to hear from her. Marriage is not always easy. It's a wonderful institution that God created for us. And it's great, and it's better than playing the single life, that's for sure. But be sure that you do it biblically, because only when it's done biblically will it be right and whole and good for everybody. And that's the word for today. Wow, got a little preachy there. I apologize, but I want everybody to understand marriage and relationships are not just to be trifled with. They're not just to be tried. They are made for us to succeed at, and God gives us formulas whereby we can conduct ourselves in marriage that will make that marriage stronger every day. And again, I'll stop now. That is the word for today. Good to see several of you on with us. Gene Goodman, Marek Paria, Terry Caldwell, Sherry McKnight, Casey Pope, Beth Tapp. I appreciate it so much. You guys are a lot of you are faithful almost every day, and we get new people on every day too. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. There are others that will watch later, whatever time of day or night you watch. It's always our pleasure to bring you the short Bible study each day from the New Testament, Monday through Friday. Spend time with God every day. It is absolutely the most productive and beautiful thing you can do all day long. Spend time with God. Please know we're praying for you, and I look forward to seeing each of you again tomorrow live at 5.